Are we ready to go, Tanya?
Yep, we're all good.
I don't see Mr. Mitchell.
Nope, maybe if you we'll just give it a minute. I think we just have about a minute to go before we start here. Andy's just coming in now, Sherry. Just be a minute.
Good evening. The Committee of Adjustment meeting for the Township of Selwyn for Tuesday, July the 12th, 2022 will call to order. Notification to members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee. Please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note it. I would like to propose that we move the order of applicants this evening to deal with the first two, which are straightforward. So I'd like to start with A3022, and I would ask you, Per, to please announce the purpose of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brandy, did you want to introduce tonight's applications?
Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee of Adjustment is holding a public hearing in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, in order to consider three applications for relief of bylaw 2009-21, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn. The prescribed notices of the public meeting were provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within 60-meter radius of the subject properties. Ministries and agencies were circulated via email. The subject properties were posted with a sign advertising the public hearings. The notices were also available on the Township's website. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person of the public body does not make oral submissions at the public hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn before the variance is granted, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn on the proposed minor variances, you must make written requests to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn by fax, email, or Dropbox. Our first application today will be application number A3022 for the property at 19 Edgewater Drive. This application seeks relief to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 17.9 meters to a dwelling, as well to reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3.1 meters from a right-of-way to the dwelling. This is in order to permit the construction of a new 219.4 square meter residential dwelling. We found that this application meets the four tests of the minor variance and recommend the application for approval. We do see that an ARC is warranted for this application, and agency comments received were from First Lake Curve Nation, who required an archaeological assessment. Pine Ridge District School Board submitted comments of no concern. As well, the Autonomy Region Conservation Authority has submitted comment recommending that the applicant establish a 30-meter vegetation protection zone, implement sedimentation and erosion control measures during construction, and an ORCA permit is required for this proposed development. We have not received any public comments to date for this application.
All right, thank you. And Deputy Clerk, I understand that Agent Joel Tanner is here.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tander, do you have anything you wish to add?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Nothing to add this time, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that committee members have this evening.
Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone else in favor or opposition for this application on the line?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just more a question of curiosity. Is that like a little causeway or like a bridge or something that links the mainland to the island? Excuse me.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, there's a bit of a linkage there between the mainland and the island location.
And so is that linkage, is it township owned or is it more of a private linkage?
It's
a private road.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A3122, please, Brandy.
Madam Chair, yes, application 83122 for 2466 Craft Point seeks relief to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 12.2 meters for dwelling in order to permit the construction of a 17.9 square meter dwelling addition. We found that this application meets the 4 tests of the minor variance and recommended for approval. An archaeological assessment is warranted for this application. Curve Lake First Nation submitted comments that they do require an archaeological assessment. For the Pine Ridge School Board submitted comments of no concern with the application, as well as Otago Reef, our conservation authority, has submitted comments that a topographic survey and planning plan, as well as an ORCA permit, will be required for the proposed development. No public comments were received to date for this application.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone here in favor or in opposition to this application tonight?
No one is registered for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2722, please.
Madam Chair, A2722 for the property at 902 Fire Road 4. This application seeks relief to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 14.7 meters to an open deck attached to the dwelling, to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 15.4 meters to a new dwelling, to reduce the minimum required front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 2.02 meters to a dwelling, to reduce the minimum required side yard setback from 3 meters to 1.2 meters to a dwelling, and to reduce the maximum total lot coverage from 20% to 28.1%. This is in order to permit the construction of a new 390.44 square meter 2-story residential dwelling, which includes a covered front porch measuring 18.75 square meters, a rear open deck of 30.6 square meters, and a rear covered deck measuring 46.33 meters squared. We found this application does meet the 4 tests of the minor variance and recommend the application for approval. Our archaeological assessment is warranted for this application. Comments were received from Curve Lake First Nation, who also require an archaeological assessment. Otago Reef Conservation Authority has commented that 30-meter vegetative buffer is recommended to be established. Implementation of a sedimentation and or erosion controls during construction. As well, ORCA permit is required for this proposed development. Lastly, Pine Ridge District School Board had no comments of concern. In terms of public comments, we did receive comments from Richard Taylor, who submitted comments expressing concern over the proposed well location. I believe Mr. Richard is in attendance today to speak to these concerns.
All right, thank you. I understand that the owners are here. Tim and Musty Keating, is there anything you wish to add?
No, not at this time.
All right, thank you. And Deputy Clerk, is there anyone else that is here to speak in favor of this application?
Madam Chair, we do have, I believe, agent, and her name is Krista, I believe, and we have Joe or Richard Taylor. Pardon me, I'm not sure if any of them have anything they'd like to say.
Yes, well, I believe that Richard Taylor is not speaking in favor of the application, but we shall see. Does the agent have anything you wish to add?
Good evening, committee. Thank you for hearing our cause. I have communicated with Bill Burgess, who is the proposed well driller, as well as our team and the homeowners, and we are happy to relocate the proposed well. We had 2 alternate places that were options. One was in the flower bed at the front of the house or in between the water and the open deck area. They were also good possible candidate places for the placement of that.
Okay, thank you. And is there anyone else that is present that would like to speak in favor of the application?
Madam Chair, we have no one else here for the application.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the application?
Thank you to the committee members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. My name is Richard Taylor, and as indicated, I have written to the committee members on behalf of my clients who own property immediately abutting to the south of the subject site. Their particular property is municipally referenced as 898 Tyndall Bay Road. My clients have owned their property for 47 years. They developed their property in 1995 with a new single-family dwelling, and all appropriate permits were obtained. They've been very fastidious in keeping those documents, and we have identified a concern in reference to the location of the well, as outlined. Has to meet specific separation requirements between my client's existing septic system and that well. We understand that the regulatory requirement specifies a minimum of approximately 48 feet in reference to an appropriate separation distance. It's helpful to know that the applicant will relocate the proposed well. I don't know precisely where it's going to be located on the subject lot, but it still has to meet appropriate regulatory requirements dealing with setbacks, particularly in relation to the septic system on their own lot as proposed, and also in reference to any septic systems in the area, including my client's property. However, the concerns are not just limited to the location of the well. There are 5 variances before you. I don't know whether you have a full appreciation as it would relate to the nature of the development. Do you have a copy of the site plan? May I make inquiry showing the proposed location of the new single-family dwelling? It is in close proximity to my client's boundary. In fact, one of the variances seeks a setback of 1.2 meters in relation to that particular boundary. But the major concerns as it would relate to the proposal are effectively the following. In brief, this is a large single-family dwelling being proposed on a small lot. And when I say a small lot, the committee members should appreciate that the zone regulation, as it would relate to Lakeshore Residential, specifies a minimum lot area of 4,050 square meters. That's the minimum. The existing lot is 1,389 square meters, approximately. By my calculation, you have a lot that is about at 34% of the minimum lot area specified for this particular zone. So from the standpoint of understanding the size of the lot itself, it is significantly at variance, although it exists as a legal non-conforming lot, but it's significantly at variance with the standard that you would customarily see for a Lakeshore Residential Zone property. The subject site is also not in conformity with other regulations of your zoning bylaw because of the non-conformity, but they're still not in conformity with your standard regulations. The minimum lot frontage, for example, for this particular zone is 45 meters. The existing lot has a frontage of 30 meters. The water frontage in terms of minimum distance is prescribed in your regulations at 45 meters. This is at 32 meters. So you have 5 variances that you're being asked to approve. Plus, you have 3 other non-conforming aspects in reference to the proposal. The most significant is the deviation from your standard requirement that stipulates that the maximum lot coverage for the single family building in this particular zone is 20%. What the proponent is seeking is effectively 28.1%. And because of the large building that's being proposed for the subject lot, which is significantly undersized in reference to your standard regulations, you effectively have an extremely large lot, or pardon me, an extremely large structure being proposed on a small lot. So from the standpoint of assessing whether or not that's minor, all of the characteristics have to be taken into account. We do not concur with the conclusion that 5 variances of the type that are being proposed represents a minor variance. That has to be assessed in the context of your zoning regulations. This does not conform with the general intent and purpose of your zoning bylaw. You've got 5 variances that are being requested and 3 other aspects of nonconformity. On the face of it, that does not maintain the general intent and purpose of your zoning bylaw. There are policies reflected in both the official plan and provincial policy that talks about shoreland or shoreline development. And from the standpoint of those particular policies, the policies of existing lots seek to have a development occur that would maximize the setback that can be achieved. It's not a situation or a circumstance where you have a proponent come along and say, this is what I want, and you have to then assess, quote unquote, an approval in the context of what the proponent wants. You have to assess your policy context, which is to maximize the setback from the high water mark, if that is achievable and feasible. And it is achievable and feasible, with the exception that you have a proponent that wants to build an oversized single family dwelling on a small lot. What you have to do is tell this proponent, go back, reconsider this, reconfigure this, and come back with a more modest proposal. The concept of proportionality is reflected in the provincial policy statement. It's also reflected in terms of compatibility provisions in your official plan. This particular proposal has to be proportionate, not just to the size of this lot, but also to the neighborhood. And so from the standpoint of our particular position, this is not in conformity with your official plan. It's not in conformity with the policies reflected in the provincial policy statement. And the last issue that must also be complied with in terms of an approval is whether this is a desirable development. And that has broad criteria applicable to it. And you just have to ask yourself, is this desirable? You've got a large building proposed on a small lot, and you've got a proponent that has to come to you and seek 5 variances and also seek that approval when it is deficient in terms of 3 other aspects of conformity with your zoning bylaw. Regulations exist not in a vacuum. They exist to achieve planning objectives. Each of those particular regulations that the proponent seeks a variance is in actual fact a deviation from what your planners have recognized in the past to be a standard that should be applicable within the context of the recognition of development, of appropriate development. And where you have a proposal like this, our submission to you is you've got an oversized building on a small lot. Tell the proponent, go back, do a more modest proposal for this particular lot, and then bring your application back. My clients, from the standpoint of this particular proposal, quite candidly indicated to me, we want to be good neighbors. We're not opposed to a development. We're not even opposed if the proponent needs additional variances, but having a large building that substantially exceeds the maximum building coverage for this lot at 28% plus is not good planning. It doesn't meet the 4 tests, and it doesn't represent desirable planning. Subject to any questions by the committee members, that's the position of my clients in reference to the proposal.
Thank you. Chair, I would like you to answer to these statements, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few points to go over. I made some notes as to Richard's comments. In regard to the first comment, in regard to the nonconformity with lot area and frontage, we do have provisions in our zoning bylaw recognizing existing lots, undersized lots of record. So that's not a particular issue in this particular case. It is an existing lot of record prior to 2009 for the existing bylaw. So that we don't need to grant particular variances for those two items because they're already recognized in our zoning bylaw. With regard to so that takes sort of a large house on a small lot, point taken. So the other point is the maximum lot coverage going from 20 to 28.1%. So I agree. Richard sort of brought up the Lakeshore residential policy and the shoreline development policy. So Lakeshore residential does have the 20% lot coverage maximum. The purpose of the minor variance application is to grant relief from that, and that's the job of the committee to take into consideration my review from a planning policies perspective. And if there's a subjective opinion from the neighbors that the committee wants to take into consideration that 28.1% is too large for this lot, that's not a planning policy professional recommendation I can make. All I can say is that there's nothing that would prevent or another planning policy that would prevent an increase from 20 to 28.1%. In that regard, I can speak to the shoreland development policy that Richard brought up. We do have policies recognizing existing development within the 30-meter setbacks that are required in our zoning bylaw. As the committee is well aware, most of our waterfront lots may or may not even be deep enough to accommodate a 30-meter setback. So therefore, our zoning bylaw recognizes that you have to limit your development or redevelopment of a property to the existing setback of the waterfront property. And in this case, it's 15.4 meters from the water's edge. The proposed development maintains that setback to the waterfront in order to protect the waterfront property and the shoreline in accordance with our official plan and our zoning bylaw. So there is no nonconformity here with regard to shoreland development, as Richard mentioned, and I find that the proposal is in conformity with those policies in our official plan and zoning bylaw. With regard to the compatibility and proportionality, Richard made some reference to that being provincial policy statement. I can't think of what particular policy that is at the moment. Perhaps Richard could send me an email on that, which policy he's referring to, and I could respond to him at a later date on that particular point. But with regard to this development, as I see it from applicable planning policy perspective, I believe it does conform to the official plan and our zoning bylaw. And I believe from the lack of, as I was explaining it to the staff earlier today, for me to comment on the size of the development being contrary to, being too large for the policy, we would have to have some kind of an urban design guideline or stable neighborhood policies or something like that in our official plan that regulates how much larger we could consider being appropriate for a minor variance. We don't have those. It becomes a subjective opinion as to what the scale of the redevelopment is and whether that's too large for the property, and not something I'm going to bear any type of opinion on. And barring any questions, those are my comments. Hopefully I was fairly clear on that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to, before we go to committee, I'd like to see if the agent has anything she wishes to add. Krista. Krista?
Hi there. Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button. Okay, so yes, in respect to Mr. Taylor's notes, I did a little bit of note taking myself. So in fear of being redundant to Mr. Lindberg, my neighbors as well are really wanting to maintain a good relationship with their neighbor, and many modifications to the original design have been made to do such a thing. The 8.1% that we're asking for overage is actually only roof covered exterior area. It could be considered patio, but within the bylaw, I understand anything with a roof structure is part of that package. So the actual interior space of that is within the perimeters of what's allowed. It's definitely, the question was if it's a desirable development. It's earthy colors. There's nothing loud about this. It's quite beautiful. The design is very nice. I think it would just only increase the value of any neighborhood dwellings. Another thing I wanted to point out is that currently there's a bunkie and there's a cottage and there's sort of a porch area, and we're planning on removing them. So we're not going to have any auxiliary buildings that are going to be obscuring anybody's view or littering the property at all. Then yes, Mr. Lindberg did point out that we are not moving any closer to the water than what is existing currently. And my clients were very, very cognizant of that in the design and the development of this property. And they didn't want to take any liberties with neighbors' views, etc. And again, we've made many modifications to appease this. And yeah, about the well and the septic, I can absolutely make sure that everything that we propose appeases all of the setbacks, and it is in agreement with the neighbors as well.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Rana?
Yes, thank you very much. Through you. I actually think that we should have either defer it until we have specific measurements between wells and septics. We usually know that information, so that concerns me. And oftentimes in Committee of Adjustment recommendations, it has in the past said that the structure is in compliance with the, I just forget the wording, the appearance of the neighborhood. I have seen that written before. So I don't know, it's hard to tell from the site plan if this, it stands out from the other homes in the neighborhood or not, but I would have a concern about that as well to ensure that it isn't overbearing for the other properties. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Let's hear first from Anita.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with Donna. I'd like to see it deferred. I find that there's compelling arguments, really strong, good arguments on both sides, whether it's the applicant or whether it's the Mr. Taylor. So really, I'm not ready to vote on this because, like I said, I think there's probably still a lot of things that have to be straightened out, especially if there's an offer to move the well or septic, I think it was the well, to some other location. So for me, I would prefer a deferral on this as well.
All right, Jerry.
Thank you. Through you to Per. Per, in the history of your history of in municipal politics, have you ever seen the health board or the building code allow a well that was too close to a septic, legally breaking the law?
Am I still unmuted? I'm just checking.
You're okay?
Yeah, okay. So through you, Madam Chair. So obviously, the location of a well is not a planning approval. It's related to the well driller locating that well in accordance with applicable law through the Ministry of Environment. So obviously, in order for the well driller to maintain their license, they have to make sure that that well is located in accordance with applicable setbacks, right? So the answer would be no. I would expect that there would not be
Exactly.
compliance, other than maybe if it was made in error, which would then have to be corrected.
Exactly. So that's my point. You know, you're 50 from a drilled, you're 100 from a dug. So I don't see where the septic issue comes into play when you've got a professional in Burgess who's been around forever. I don't understand what the issue is. If they're willing to move it, whether they have to or not, I don't know. But if they're willing to move it and work with that, I'm not sure what my colleague's concern is with the well.
Okay, thank you. And I see, Krista, you have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that you knew there is actually no existing well. The former cottage owners were drawing from the lake. There's only a septic system which is being removed. And I also wanted to mention that with all of the setbacks, the property is virtually unbuildable. I had given an example of that. I included it with my application. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's a triangle to one side of the property and it's virtually unbuildable. So definitely variances are in accordance with this.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. Just some comment in reference to matters. Just so the committee is well aware, the existing coverage of the existing buildings is shown in the planning report at 6.35%. And I'll be quite candid, my client wants to be good neighbors. They indicated to me, but the applicants are asking for the moon. That was the phrase they actually used. And we have no problem within the context of a development that would be limited to the regulatory requirement at 20%. Mr. Heron is quite correct. The law says there's minimum required setbacks dealing with a well in relation to a septic system. But in this particular case, that was not captured. That had to be captured by us, not by the well driller, by us. We had to provide the information associated with my client's septic system based upon the 1995 approvals that were given for people to wake up and recognize if they put the well where they were going to put this well, it was going to be located in the wrong location. It was going to be wrong and in contravention of the law. And for people to assume that mistakes don't happen, I just went through a process where a severance line went right through the midst of an existing septic because no one knew where the septic was. So mistakes do happen. We don't want it to happen in this particular case. And we can only emphasize that, look, go back, do a redesign, put a more modest size house on this particular lot. That's our position.
Thank you. All right. Donna, do you still want to put forward the motion to defer? Having heard that you do not get involved in that with this committee of adjustment?
No, I would be happy if in the conditions that we indicate that we receive a report from the well driller as to exactly where the well will be drilled and the distance from septics, their septic and neighbor septics. If we had that in the conditions before they got their building permit, I think I would be satisfied.
Kara, can you speak to that, please? Is this a condition that we normally would put in there? Well, not normally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my suggestion on that would possibly, we could ask for a revised site plan as a condition with the revised location of the well on that revised site plan be part of the conditions of approval.
That would be fine with me.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else? Seeing no, I would like to have a motion to approve the applications before us. Jerry? Seconded by.
No, I just had a quick question.
Sure.
So Pear, and I don't know what their timeline is. I know Mr. Keating's house is for sale in Bridgenorth here right now, and I don't know what their timelines are. What does redoing a site plan do for timelines for them just to mark where a well is that really has no concern for, we don't know, all the ins and outs of it. So I'm just wondering how long that would take. Is there a delay to that? And does that affect their build? It's tough enough now to get trades.
So through you, Madam Chair, I don't think it should take that long for Key Design to just mark up a revised location on their site plan. Obviously, that'll be just a condition of the minor variance. So we're not delaying if the committee decides to approve tonight. We'll enter into the appeal period immediately upon the decision tonight, and then Key Design can address that issue as part of meeting the conditions of the minor variance approval, including applying for the requisite building permit, right? They can file that during the appeal period. The building department just can't issue the building permit until the appeal period for the minor variance is over.
It's as usual. Krista, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I'm happy moving forward and doing it immediately. I can get that done.
Okay. All right, so I'll come back to asking for a motion to approve the applications before us tonight. We move in a second. Jerry is moving it. Andy seconding it. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, thank you. We have no deferred matters. The minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting of June the 28th, 2022. Anita, seconded by Donna. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. And a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is August the 9th, 2022. Andy, seconded by Anita. All in favor? It's carried, thank you. And Mr. Mayor will be commencing with our council meeting.
6:20, it's 6:17 now, 6:20. Just looking for Donna, and then we'll get started.
Yeah,
Oh.
Donna sent her regrets for this portion of the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I'm going to call the regular meeting of council for July 12th to order and begin with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Ashbeck. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. We'll please observe a moment of silence so that council staff and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community we are trying to serve. Thank you, colleagues. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest on the agenda that has been circulated? Madam Clerk, please note there are none. We have our minutes for the June 28th meeting. The motion from Sherry, seconded by Anita. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. No discussion out of the minutes, and we have two deputations this evening. The first is a staff introduction, and I think Angie, you're going to do this.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I think Natalie, maybe you could just liven up your screen so we can. I'll have you on the screen. There you are. Thank you. Yeah, so it's my pleasure to introduce Natalie Gennaro. She's the newest member of our customer service team. Natalie is a Selwyn resident, born and raised here, went to school locally. She is a graduate of the University of Ottawa. She did a BA there, and she has a minor in communications. She's been a great fit for our customer service team. She's got some experience working with a local real estate firm most recently. So she's definitely got familiarity around land transactions and certainly the community. She's great with our customers at the front counter, and with her communications background, she's providing a lot of backup support to Megan Larocque, our communications coordinator. She's got a lot of great ideas around marketing and social media and website design. So she's a great addition to the team, and we're really happy to have her on board. I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything, Natalie.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's been great so far, and I'm looking forward to what's to come.
It's great to have you on board. We look forward to working with you. And
Thank you.
Success in your new job.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll move on to our second delegation. I think Chris there he is going to be doing a presentation on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Chris, welcome. And I guess Christy is with you.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Mitchell and members of council. This presentation is a group effort, and I'm joined by Alana Solomon, the CAO of Township North Kawartha. Alana and I co-chaired the advisory committee for the Community Safety and Wellbeing, also joined by Christine Ash, co-founder of a Rising Collective local consulting firm who worked on the plan. Unfortunately, Chris Galeazza from the OPP, who's also on the advisory committee, is unable to attend tonight, but will be connecting with the township in the very near future around this plan. We are very pleased to be here today, presenting the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for your consideration. The path for getting to this point has been, winding and somewhat bumpy at times. However, we firmly believe in the process we undertook and the plan you have in front of you today. Before we get to the presentation, it's important that I recognize the invaluable contributions made by a number of groups for the development of the plan, particularly the advisory committee. We had 33 members representing leaders from local municipalities and organizations and service providers. They participated on the committee for over a year, through 2021 in the pandemic, which was very challenging on its own. And don't think it's a stretch to say none of them really needed this additional work on their plate, but they recognized the importance of the plan and persevered, and their perseverance is appreciated. Almost 100 agency representatives shared their knowledge and experience towards this plan. Client advisory committees also shared their knowledge, but also their personal experiences to contribute to what's in the plan. Police services boards in the city and the county, township councils and rural residents who participated in outreach efforts, and those who completed the online survey through Connect Peterborough all helped and contributed to the development of the plan. I also think it's important to acknowledge the work of our consultants, Horizon Collective. Their professionalism, flexibility, and adaptability has played a key role in getting us to this point. So without any further delay, if go to the next slide, please. Or sorry, we're not sharing yet. Thanks, Christy. So the agenda for our presentation today, looking at the plan and the provincial framework, community priority areas, the process and engagement at a glance, planning in context, which shows throughout the plan around belonging and safety, the plan at a glance, and our next steps. So I'll turn it over to Alana for the next part of our presentation.
Thank you. In 2019, the Safer Ontario Act mandated that every municipal council prepare and adopt a community safety and well-being plan. In Peterborough, the city and county, along with 5 townships, Douro-Dummer, Havelock Belmont-Methuen, North Kawartha, Selwyn, and Trent Lakes, decided to work collaboratively to develop a joint community safety and well-being plan. The purpose of the plan is to identify, align, and focus collaborative actions to build a community in which everyone is safe, included, and part of a community. The goal of the plan, as outlined in the provincial framework, is to address community priority risks through proactive integrated strategies that ensure more vulnerable populations receive the right help from the right providers. Essentially, this will build capacity in the community and alleviate the burden on emergency services. The desired change as a result of the plan is that the community will work together in new ways to address safety and well-being issues through programs and services that are available to all who work, live, and play in the city and the county of Peterborough. No one agency can do this work on their own. No one individual can single-handedly address the systems level change that's required for true belonging to take hold. It will take a broad ecosystem, excuse me, that includes all levels of government, community organizations, community volunteers, and kind neighbors working together to achieve the goals outlined in the plan. It's important to note that through the collaborative approach of developing the plan, there has been a sense of re-energized willingness to have these hard conversations, to align priorities and work together. The process has fostered dialogue about the interconnectedness of issues and has strengthened relationships, all of which are a positive secondary outcome to the process of creating this plan. This has resulted in a deeper appreciation for the continuing work and a stronger understanding of what will be needed to move the needle toward positive change. Next slide, please. Community safety and well-being plans use a multi-sectoral approach to recognize that police, municipalities, and community organizations cannot address the complex social issues at play in community safety and well-being on their own. However, in taking a lead in developing the plan, municipalities can help define and address priority risks through proactive integrated strategies that ensure more vulnerable populations receive this right help from the right providers. In particular, the framework indicates that the focus of the plan should be on upstream approaches as much as possible, including enhancing social development, prevention, and risk intervention strategies. It also suggests that the success factors for developing and implementing the plan include building on existing strengths and taking an evidence-based approach to identifying risks and priorities. I'll pass it over to Christy.
Thanks, Alana. Ideally, the plan will serve as a community plan, inspiring collective action towards common priorities. The plan itself is a guide for partners, including municipalities, police, and social service organizations, to embed priorities into their own planning and work collaboratively across sectors. As you would have seen in the plan itself, we've organized it into 4 main sections. The first outlines our approach, including the guiding principles and frameworks that inform the underlying ethos of the plan, as well as the process, timeline, who is engaged in the planning process, and the 5 priorities in the plan. The second section is the current context, which describes what is happening now in our community related to the priority areas. The third is the plan itself. In this section, we outline each priority area, why it is important to address the current challenges related to it. Promising practices and collaborations in action are highlighted. And for each priority area, a common outcome is stated, the goals are described, and each goal has a set of strategies to achieve the goal. And finally, the appendices provide details on the approach, list of advisory committee members, participants in the engagement process, the indicators that were used, and data sheets for the city and county of Peterborough and participating townships. Through the extensive process of creating this plan, the need and desire of every person to belong, no matter their life situation, identities, experiences, or beliefs, ring out loud and clear, and it is therefore central to the plan. There is already a strong sense of belonging in and to their community, neighborhood, and family. For others, the barriers to belonging are complex, affected by daily intersecting realities that make it extremely difficult to be safe and to feel safe, to have opportunities to participate in community, and to have access to resources that meet their basic needs. At the heart of this plan is the desire to create the conditions in our community under which everyone is able to access safe, affordable, and appropriate housing, and to access income, food security, and the health and mental health supports needed. They need to feel safe and well. Based on significant research, data analysis, and community engagement, these 5 areas have been identified as the most important priorities to support community safety and well-being. And these 5 priority areas are housing and homelessness, poverty and income security, healthcare and mental health, substance use and addictions, transportation, and connectivity. This slide shows the process we undertook to develop the plan and a timeline. The process was based off the guidelines outlined in the provincial framework. The process began with the formation of an advisory committee comprised of representatives from municipalities and community organizations across sectors. From here, we did a deep dive into relevant community plans, research, and data. We then conducted significant consultation with the community, which I will speak to in a moment. And from here, priority areas were validated and risk factors were identified. We then worked with existing cross-sectoral groups who were already actively addressing priority areas to gather advice on outcomes, goals, and strategies that should be included in the plan. As you see on this slide, many groups and individuals contributed valuable information, experiences, perspectives, and ideas to the development of the plan. Due to the scope and timeline of the project, there were limitations on the number and types of consultation activities that could be conducted. And while there was significant engagement, development of the plan also relied on the outcomes of authentic engagement activities from other recent consultations. Outcomes of engagement are described in 2 reports that were used to inform the development of strategies related to each priority area, and these are available online. The first is the Service Provider Engagement Report, which outlines findings from 8 focus group sessions, the 22 meetings held with intersectoral groups and service providers, and the 4 presentations to the police services boards. And also there is the Public Consultation Report, which outlines findings from the online public survey, the 2 meetings held with the lived experience advisory groups, 2 town hall meetings, and 5 presentation to township councils. With the completion of community consultations, established community planning and partnership groups who are actively working to address priority areas were engaged to advise the city and county of Peterborough on outcomes and strategies related to each specific priority area. We refer to these groups as action tables because they are already actively doing the work. So on this slide, we have identified the different groups who generously action tables in the development of the plan. In the plan, we include a high-level overview of data and demographics for the city and the county. We also include overviews of each township. And here are just some of the key indicators and community trends that we address in the plan. In the plan, we also share some data that speak to the interconnectedness of safety and well-being. We know that when people are well, they are more able to prevent, reduce, and heal from harms. And when communities are safe, it is easier for people to thrive and to belong. So on this slide, we have included a couple of relevant pieces of information that we cover more in depth in the plan, and we assure you there are many more in the plan itself. And while we speak to many challenges we face as a community, we did want to highlight some positive elements, including that residents in Peterborough have a slightly higher sense of belonging than provincial and national levels. The survey, many respondents in both the city and the county recommend their community as a good place to live. As part of the plan, we asked about perceptions of crime, and we looked at the data that is collected by both Peterborough Police Services and the OPP. You will note that based on the results of the survey, there are perceptions that crime has increased quite significantly in the city, but also in the county. And based on the data, overall crime has increased in the city since 2018, as have calls to service. In the county, calls to service have increased, but crime has actually decreased. So this slide shows a bit more of a breakdown in some trends of actual crime statistics from 2018 to 2021. And again, these patterns speak to the importance of police being able to address emergency responses and crime. And it also demonstrates the need for community investments in prevention and social development capacity of police to respond to those emergency situations. So the plan itself offers 19 specific goals and 63 detailed strategies that address risk intervention, prevention, and social development to meet the goals. And it's important to note that while strategies appear under one priority, many of them are applicable across all of the priority areas. So I will now present each priority area and the identified outcome for each area. And the goals are listed on the right-hand side. And certainly with 63 strategies, there may be too many for us to present here, but certainly if you haven't already, encourage you to read through them. So the first priority area is housing and homelessness. And the outcome statement that was identified is that all residents have access to quality housing they can afford. The second priority area is poverty and income security. And the
I think we've lost Christy.
Oh, sorry, you lost the presentation.
We lost you for a minute there, so I can hear you now.
It's back on? Okay, good. Do you want me to go back to the poverty and income security?
Yeah, just go ahead with that.
Okay, great. So the second priority area is poverty and income security. So all residents have equitable access to income security and are valued for their contributions. The third priority area is healthcare and mental health. And the outcome statement is that every resident has access to healthcare and mental health supports. The fourth priority area is substance use and addictions. And the outcome is to reduce harms related to substance use. And the fifth priority area is active transportation and connectivity. And the outcome is that people are connected to programs and services that meet their needs. Throughout the engagement sessions and work with the action tables, it was clear that for this cross-sectoral collaboration to be successful, it will take a shared understanding of approaches and commitment to certain core values. In many ways, these approaches and values are just as important for the success of the plan as the goals and the strategies. So on the right-hand side of this slide, we have outlined the shared approaches and values that are described in detail in the plan. And now I will hand it back over to Chris to share about next steps.
Thanks, Christy. Just to wrap up the presentation, what we're doing tonight is bringing the community safety and wellbeing plan to all councils. Earlier today, council at Havelock, Bell and Methuen and at Trent Lakes adopted the plan. General committee at the city endorsed it a week or so ago, and will be through to county council at the beginning of next month to cover all the municipalities. We'll be working to develop an implementation strategy over the next few months, and that strategy will be brought to the new councils after the municipal election. But there's a list of items that we'll be considering. They're expanded upon in the cover report that I provided as part of the package. I will note on the funding consideration, there are no financial or budgetary implications to adopting this plan. It will be future councils that decide if and how much or at what pace any local funding is put towards initiatives related to this plan. The province has not earmarked any funding, neither for developing the plan or implementing the plan. So certainly grants will be a component of project implementation and working to address the priorities in the plan. Number 3 here, convening a summit on housing, homelessness, and addictions. It stems out of a resolution from City Council back in December, and one that is pending for County Council at its next session as well, to look at all levels of government, service providers, staff, to be discussing how to address these issues in our community and who does what and who funds what. And finally, how this plan can support community-based and organizational planning, so that as Christy and Alana said, not one organization, not one government, not one level of government, not one municipality can do this alone. So this work has to be integrated across sectors, and that will be part of our work moving forward. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Colleagues, questions? Sherry.
I don't have a question, but I want to commend you for all the hard work you've done. It's a gargantuan task, and it's important that we break through all the silos that exist. There's a lot of people out there doing good work, but quite often they don't communicate. And if this is a way of breaking through the barriers, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry. Other comments, colleagues? Okay, I have a couple of comments. So the first one is, and it's not a major point, but it's a little bit of an irritant for me. So the reference always to Peterborough in the document, to me, should either say Peterborough Region or say Peterborough City and County. I understand what you mean by Peterborough, but there's going to be a lot of external readers of this, including at the provincial level, that may just turn their focus on the city and not understand that this is covering the county as well. So I don't know, it's probably too late to change that, but I would be more comfortable if it said either Peterborough Region or Peterborough City and County. So that's just an observation. The second one, though, is really a question to you. Like Sherry, I got to commend you for the tremendous amount of work and energy and that you've put into doing this. The challenge I have, though, is that the levers for addressing many of the problems that you have identified are not held at the municipal level. They're held at the provincial and federal level. And I'm interested in making the connection for me between the development of this plan, which speaks the reality of what we face, on how we as a municipality are going to be dealing with what in many instances fall within provincial or federal jurisdiction, and certainly on the financial side. Those two levels of government have the financial means to deal with some of these, what are gargantuan problems that really cannot be put on the backs of the municipal taxpayer. So I don't know whether Chris or Christy or Alana want to take a stab at trying to address that.
Thank you very much. I'll give a stab at that first, and by all means, Alana and Christy can add as well. The guidelines for this from the province are pretty clear. They're laying it at the feet of the communities to come up with new ways to work together, using existing resources, doing more with less, all those catchphrases that drive us crazy, to try to change what's going on. And in some cases, I think we will find success. As Alana mentioned in her comments, one of the byproducts of just developing the plan and having everybody around the table from all the various sectors is that they are communicating a little more, and they've self-recognized that, independent of talking necessarily directly to me or anybody at the city or that way. It's just been that's the buzz around how this has started to evolve. Some of the grants that have come out from the province have indicated, favorable consideration if it aligns with the community safety and well-being plan of the community. So we'll have to work through that, but it will be aligning priorities, and the action tables that Christy had identified. I'll pick on the Peterborough, the addictions and substance use area, because it's the Peterborough drug strategy that is going to be acting as the action table around that. And that is, that I guess that's a good example of how collaborative work between 4 primary agencies, those being Peterborough Public Health, PARN, Forecast, and Peterborough Police are working collaboratively to address those issues related to addictions and substance use. And they have that core group, and then they have a much larger group that whole number of, there's I think about 13 or 14 other agencies, including CMHA, Peterborough Youth Services, and the like. And I feel like I'm dancing around your question about where is the provincial dollars coming from. We will have to present a more nuanced argument to ministries to show that we're addressing this in a collaborative or a different plan, likely asking for more dollars to address them, because we're linking social services and mental health, even though local governments and social services have nothing, no direct responsibility for things like mental health and addictions issues. But we do have the hospital, we do have family health team, we do have the Ontario health team involved with this plan as well. So this is where the cross collaboration is going to have to happen, and pulling in the one big large direction on all these priorities.
Thank you, Chris. Alana?
And just maybe to take that a little further, thank you, Mayor Mitchell. I do think, there is going to be a role for municipalities to advocate with those higher levels of government. But even at a more collaborative level, some of these smaller groups that Chris just referred to, there are some grant applications that they can perhaps apply for. So maybe letters of support coming from the municipalities, and referencing back to the plan and the needs and the statistics and evidence that we have. And then there's other ways I think that the plan can be used to inform municipal councils as they move into their strategic planning as we move forward. not everything needs to have perhaps a price tag. It maybe indirectly does, but things such as allowing secondary units or reducing the size of a home that has to be built so they're more affordable for people. So there's a lot of strategic moves that can be made that maybe aren't so much finance based. So just kind of a consideration of both those things.
Thank you, Alana. Okay, I think that exhausts the questions. So we're being asked for two motions, right? One to receive and one to, is it approve is the word that we use? Adopt the community plan. So Sherry, are you moving that? Okay, and Anita, you're seconding it. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay, well, thank you very much, folks, and we appreciate all the work that you've done, as well as appreciate the presentation this evening. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for your active listening.
Okay, colleagues, next we have question period. Madam Clerk, are there any questions?
No questions.
Okay, we'll move on to municipal officers and staff reports, and we have the second quarter work plan. So I'll go through our normal process of going by department, and we'll start with the Chief Administrative Officer. So any questions on the CAO? Just checking my own notes, so just give me a second, colleagues. Okay, nothing on that. Building and Planning Department. Any comments on that? I just wanted to make note of the stats, which are simply amazing. So I just want to make sure I've got this right. I think I saw Robert, I was on the line here. In the first 2 quarters of last year, total construction value for permits was 10.4 million. And this year it's 24.3 for the first 6 months for the same period. Am I reading that correctly? Robert?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you'll notice that we did have a qualifier note at the bottom. There was some discrepancy recorded in the construction value amounts during the transition into the cloud permit system. So the early data for last year is not necessarily completely accurate. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, I appreciate that. But for the first 6 months of this year, the permit value is over $24 million. And so,
yeah, we've had a lot of housing activity, and it's been very, very busy here in our building department.
I would imagine that's good news. Okay. Community Corporate Services, the Clerk's Department. Any questions on that one? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move to the Finance Department. Any questions of Lane? No. Okay. We're then on to the Fire Department. Any questions on that? No? Okay. We're then on to Human Resources. Any questions with Human Resources? Not seeing any. We'll go to the library. Any questions about the library? Don't see any. Parks and Rec. Any questions in Parks and Rec? You go ahead, Sherry.
Sorry to you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Mike and to please pass along to staff the fantastic job that they did for the Jazz Festival and for the Shamrock Festival. They worked long hours, both days, and everything was just perfect. Thank you.
On the those 2 events over the weekend, was our green event policy in place for those 2 because I know we developed it, but we hadn't really used it because we just getting back to events now. So I don't know, Angie or who, if somebody could answer that.
Yes, our sustainability coordinator worked specifically with the Jazz and Art Festival on greening the jazz event. She didn't have an opportunity to work with the Shamrock Group this year.
So how did it go with the Jazz Festival?
They were very receptive to working on different initiatives to make sure the event was as green as possible. And I think they did a really good job.
That's great to hear. Okay, thank you. Public Works, any questions from Public Works? I had a question. The work that is taking place on Water Street, which is a multi-year project, what I'm going to make an assumption, and if I'm wrong, correct me, that we will shut that work down at some point in the fall, that there won't be anything being done during the winter, and that it'll fire back up in the spring. Is that sort of the approach?
That's correct, Mayor Mitchell. We're still not sure about the boat launch, but there might be some of it done in the winter when the water's low, but we haven't got to that stage yet.
And will Water Street be open in the winter then? Or?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so good. That's public work. And I think that's it. Okay. Janice, did you want to add something in general on the work plan?
Not really in particular, just it has been, of course, as always, a very busy time for all of our departments. Lots of challenges that were unexpected this year, as we all know, with the storm and other things coming around. As you all know as well, we're going through lots of recruitment, so that is always a challenge as well, just getting through those recruiting processes. And also for all of our managers and other staff who are trying to kind of pick up the slack while we're down an employee or helping to train new employees. So it does add a lot to the plate of the managers in particular. And we have had a lot of that. So just kudos out to those folks for keeping the wheels on our bus just rolling round and round really, really well. Thanks.
Thank you. So I need a motion to receive that report from Anita. Seconded by Jerry. All in favor? Carried. Okay, our next report is our second quarter financial report. Lane, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Mitchell. I really don't have anything to add over and above the report. A few comments near the end, which are maybe not standard in the second quarter report, where we're talking about the storm damage that Janice just mentioned, and price escalations and some of our fuel surcharges. So those will definitely be a challenge, of course, as we close out the year. Fuel in particular is having an impact across many areas. I think I've definitely talked about that with council in the past. And so I'm hoping that some of the short-term relief that we're seeing from the province with respect to fuel will start to trickle through, but that's something that we'll be monitoring and may impact our 2023 budget as well.
Yeah, I suspect you're right. Any questions, Elaine? Not seeing any. We need to accept that report. Anita, seconded by Jerry. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and second from Lane is two formal budget amendments that are being proposed. Go ahead, Lane.
Thank you, Mayor Mitchell. Yeah, so the first amendment is really a housekeeping matter to clear up after the 2021 year end. I just actually exchanging emails today with our auditors. We'll hopefully have those 2021 statements before council at the first meeting in September for formal acceptance and approval. So the first amendment there just takes care of closing out the accumulated revenue figures from last year. And then the second amendment is with respect to Water Street. And this is at this juncture our best estimate of where the phasing will end up at the end of the year. And as Rick just mentioned, there may be some work on the boat ramp. We may have to bring back a further amendment, but everything would be in accordance with the original budget that was put forward to council.
Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? So I just want to clarify in my mind then on budget amendment number 1. So our accumulated surplus when you're closing out the books is $152,000 when all is taken into account, higher than what you had originally anticipated. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Mayor Mitchell, that's the cumulative effect of all the changes. I don't know if I could necessarily say that that's like a balancing mechanism that we put in just to ensure that everything balances to zero. Because in some instances, like we didn't budget for a deficit in the fire department, but we did have a deficit in the fire department. So it's an accumulation of all of those numbers, but it doesn't necessarily reflect on the surplus. So I'd have to actually crunch that through to see what that number was.
Okay. And on amendment number 2, that's your best estimate right now, what we're going to pull from those various sources to fund the work for this year, right?
That's correct.
Subject to change.
Yeah, and you know, if we have a good fall, then that's when definitely we like to keep the contractors working on some of this work and getting it done sooner. But that would definitely, if we vary any from the existing budget that's before council, we'd have to bring that back.
Okay, thank you. So colleagues, we need a motion to approve both amendment 1 and amendment 2. Yes, we can do it in one motion. Jerry, seconded by Anita. All those in favor? Carried. And the final staff report for decision comes from Janice, and this is the agreement with Orca that we had discussed before would be forthcoming. Janice, do you want to speak to that?
For sure. Thank you very much. I think as everybody would recall, there have been some significant changes made to the Conservation Authorities Act and related regulations that need to be dealt with by the Conservation Authority and its member municipalities. As part of that process, the Conservation Authority was to provide to us the program and service inventory that kind of set out the programs and services in detail and categorize them in the different categories in terms of the type of funding mechanisms essentially available to support them. I have provided for your information a copy of that inventory. And you'll see that really the services are broken down into 3 different categories. Category 1 being the mandatory services that Orca needs to provide under provincial legislation. And the report gives you some examples of those there. Category 2 are municipally requested services that require specific agreements with the municipalities that they're related to. So in our case, we have 3 of those. We have our risk management official, public education and outreach services. We have our plan review and technical clearances services agreement, and we have our newly approved Lakefield Campground operating agreement. So with respect to that category of services, our risk management official and public education and outreach agreement is current and met the requirements of the legislation, as does our new Lakefield Campground agreement. We did take the opportunity to review the plan review and technical clearance agreement and have updated it a little bit to make sure it's consistent with the wording in the new regulation, is clear with regard to the mandatory versus review agency roles of Orca, to establish some standard response times and quarterly reporting of those targets. As per the previous agreement, it still requires a 5-year review and provides a termination by either party upon 6 months written notice. So a copy of that agreement is attached for your information, and I would recommend that we authorize the execution of that agreement through bylaw this evening. The third category is kind of a catch-all of other services deemed advisable by Orca that aren't mandatory and are not covered off by a Category 2 agreement. Some examples there are climate change initiatives, local water monitoring programs, and land stewardship services. For those types of services, that Orca is required to enter into cost apportionment agreements with the member municipalities who benefit from those to allow for the continuation of them. The proposal is for an assessment of 3% of the levy that's apportioned for the Category 1 services in order to support the ongoing provision of the Category 3 services. To give you a sense of what that would mean to Selwyn, in 2022, 3% of the levy would have been approximately $6,560. And I would certainly say that I think the township has benefited significantly through those types of services over the years. Certainly, we've had very extensive tree planting activities. We've had ORCA assistance with our shoreline restoration projects, with our installation of the bioretention cell at the Lakeville Beach. Lots of work together for grant applications that have been successful. So really, I do think we get very good value for the cost that's being proposed, and I would recommend that we authorize that agreement by bylaw again this evening as well.
Thank you very much, Janice. Questions, colleagues? Jerry, move it. Anita seconded it. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, colleagues, we have consent items. Does anybody have any items they would like to pull? Sherry?
5D.
5D. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, Anita, yes. Which one?
5A.
5A. So we have 5A and 5D. Okay. Anita, go ahead. 5A.
I'm just loading up the document. This has to do with the short-term rental enforcement. So if I understand the report correctly, there was basically 3 issues with one property. So that person would not have received any fines as a result of that, or basically got a warning this time. How does that work exactly?
Robert?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we had 3 neighboring residents all make a complaint about one occurrence at the property. So there was only one instance where the police were ultimately called and attended site. So we do have one confirmed occurrence, and under our enforcement protocol, any second confirmed bylaw infraction will initiate the inspection fee protocol.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Sherry, 5D.
Thank you. Through you to Janice, with regards to the waste collection contract extension. Do you know, Janice, if the trucks that pick up the garbage have a GPS tracker on them?
I don't know that for sure, Sherry. I would have to find out for you, and I could get back to you.
Okay, we are being asked to pay a fuel surcharge. I can tell you that in my particular subdivision, they don't take the quickest route. They go back and forth for some reason. I don't know if some guy's learning how to drive or something, and they speed. So I don't know if in our contract we have the ability to question that kind of thing, but from a safety perspective, if nothing else, we should be able to say something to them.
That's definitely feedback that I can discuss with our contractor for sure.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you. Through you to Deputy Mayor Senes. They do have GPS in there, and yes, they can track the speed. I've used it before myself during a complaint process, and they can narrow it down to how fast they were going in a specific time. So yes, that is available to you if you call them. They'll let you know.
Okay, I knew that it was available for our recycling, but I didn't know for sure if they had it for the garbage. Thank you.
Yeah, if you had a specific concern, if you could call staff and we would follow up on that for you.
Okay. That's it for consent. I have a motion to receive all of those. Anita and Jerry, all those in favor? Okay, we have no petitions, so we'll go to portfolio updates. We'll start with Anita. I think you're muted, Anita.
Sorry about that. Sorry, okay. Yeah, I had a meeting with some members of the executive of the Golden Years Club, and they were just picking my brain a little bit about how the township could help them. So I've directed them to Angie. So Angie might be able to help them out with some information with regards to grants and that sort of thing. I attended the Jazz Festival this weekend. It was very well done, very enjoyable. The whole weekend, actually, that with the good weather and stuff, was very good. So kudos to the organizers of both the Jazz Festival and the Shamrock Festival. It's good to see that so many of our organizations are sort of getting back into the swing of things, sort of post-COVID. But Children's Stage Lakefield, I noticed as well. They're getting things together. With regards to the homecoming weekend, Mr. Mayor, you will be asked to speak at a couple of the events. I'll provide you with that information if you're available. One is the opening reception on the Saturday morning at 9:30, and then the other one is at the Moses and Nellie Marsden dedication at the Lakefield campground. But I'll send you the information on that. And I will also send a final the itinerary or flyer. I'll send that to staff and to council when it's been finalized in the next week or so.
Thank you, Anita. Jerry on Parks and Rec.
Public Works, they're still getting the roads ready to get chipping and brushing and still cleaning up the mess. I was talking to Rick and Jennifer the other day, and they can't believe how much mess is still out there. So that's delaying everything. Hopefully they can get the enough roads ready to, or the roads that are scheduled to be tar and chip ready in time. So we can get them all done this year. And again, that'll depend on Miller too with their availability, because everybody's running behind. And thanks for mentioning the Shamrock and the Jazz Festival. Unfortunately, Mike and I couldn't connect today. I was looking for some numbers to provide you, because Mike's got a ballpark idea, and we couldn't hook up due to meeting schedules. And then the only time he'd get a haircut was 6:30 tonight. So he couldn't make it tonight. So I will have those numbers for you, but they were well attended according to Mike, and everything on the outside went off without a hitch. Not sure about the internal workings. So other than that, everybody's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry?
On the beginning of the long weekend for July the 1st, I talked to several business owners, and they were saying that it was their best sales ever that they had experienced for the Thursday of that long weekend. So good to see people are back out and spending their money. That's it.
Thank you, Sherry. And very quickly, just a quick update from the county. We did authorize the official plan, put that forward to the province for their acceptance. The ORV has been adopted in the way that we had said on certain roads, and they're going to be working through that going forward. In terms of public health, there's been a small uptick in the number of cases. And it was great to see two new pieces of infrastructure this past couple of weeks in the community. One was got a chance to look at the Scout Hall as part of the celebration of the link. 1 year of the link, 7,000 riders in the past year. Ridership between May 22 and May 21 is up over 200%. So that was good to celebrate, and the new Scout Hall looks really good. And then we had an opportunity as a library board, and Donna would have been reporting on this, to look at the new makerspace. It's coming along quite nicely, and they hope to have that operation in September. So that's my report, and that would take us to other new or unfinished business. Not seeing any. We have two bylaws, the one authorizing the ORCA agreement and the other the extension with Waste Connections. And the mover, Anita, seconded by Jerry. All those in favor, confirming bylaw from Sherry, seconded by Anita. All those in favor? And adjournment from Jerry, seconded by Anita. All those in favor? Thank you, colleagues. Have a good night. Bye-bye. Thanks to staff.